All right. So yep, we're here today to talk a little bit about crop insurance and kind of the ins and outs of the program. We're going to try to give you guys just a broad overview of it, not to get too much into the weeds, but just give an idea of what's out there, what's available for berry producers up here in Northwest Washington. So let's see here. Introduce myself. I'm Adam Vandenbrake. I'm actually based out of Wenatchee, Washington, but I work around up here. Work with a lot of berry growers up here. Been doing this for about 5 years. Been learning a lot over these last couple of years working up here. And so along with me here is Trevor. He can introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having us. My name is Trevor Fawcett. I work on the lending side. So at Northwest Farm Credit Services, we're a co-op financial institution. And fortunately, we're also, I work on the lending side, and we'll talk about that today. But fortunate to have crop insurance agents like Adam, who puts a lot of great risk management tools out there, and we're able to connect him with a lot of our growers locally here. So take it away, Adam. Thanks.
Right. So being we got a smaller crowd here, don't hesitate as we're going along. Raise your hand, pop up questions. So crop insurance is a federal program. So that's what we need to, one thing to keep in mind is this is federally run, federally mandated. It started through the crop bill. So there's, the nice thing is it's the same coverage, same price, same election, same everything, the way you run it with whoever you get it through. So it's really nice. It's not something like your home auto life insurance where you're going to be shopping rates. It's all based on your coverage. So we're here. That's why we're here, just to present you guys, let you guys know kind of how it works. And then a big portion of this is that the premiums that are paid for crop insurance are subsidized by the taxpayers. So realistically, it makes it a really cost efficient program to run with. There's, depending on, we'll get into it a little bit more later, but depending on the coverage levels you have, you can have up to the government paying up to 80% of your premiums. So you can get, pennies on the dollar as far as your coverage goes. And what we're going to be doing is, the way this program works is there's no one size fits all. It's not, you're just going to buy a bundle. It is specific to your operation. So that's where an agent like myself comes in, is we help you navigate the way the program works, the options available, and how to best utilize it to fit your needs. So there's, like I said, there's any agent around should be able to help you do this. So that's the nice portion of this, is that, we just want to educate you on it. I'll be available to answer questions after this, but also if you have somebody that you're working with, there's a lot of different places out there that have people who will help facilitate crop insurance. So that's a nice piece of it. Let's see here. And so Trevor's going to go into this a little bit more, but I'll jump in here real quick. There's just like your regular automobile home insurance, there's certain things that crop insurance covers. And again, this year has been definitely an interesting year. And some of the top 3 things that we're looking at here on this screen, we've been able to experience for good or bad. So of course, as of now, one of the things that crop insurance will cover would be flooding. That I was just driving up here for the first time in a couple weeks, definitely saw was prevalent. Another thing we saw this summer, the excessive heat that came through and really fried a lot of the berries that were out there. That would be something that, is uncontrollable to the grower. So that's where this comes into play, is growing practices that are happening, as long as the grower is doing prudent farming practices, these are these uncontrollable risks that are basically out of your control. So like I said, something such as drought or excessive heat, there can be, freeze damage in the winter, a fire could come through. There could be just some quality issues with your berries. There's insects, and then also in some of the programs, again, we'll get in farther, there could be some coverage for just loss of revenue, loss of decline in price, because that's something that is a variability that's out of a grower's control as well. So that's another reason I want to bring Trevor in, is he sees these things firsthand with the growers that he works with, and kind of elaborate on some of these things.
Yeah, just speaking to it quickly here. Thanks, Adam. I've had a chance to meet with a lot of growers and learn about a lot of these risks you guys deal with every year, and Mother Nature always throws you a different curveball every year, it seems like. And so crop insurance doesn't work for every grower out there, but just understanding how it can work in these situations for your operation, I think is important for all growers out there. And, Adam does a good job educating on that, but, we all know the raspberry, it seems to be a pretty finicky berry to grow and process and everything, right? So much of Mother Nature has an impact on quality and just being able to get your finished product the way you want. So having some of the risk management tools like crop insurance in place just can kind of help with that.
Okay. So next slide here. Okay, so basically there's three tools that are available for crop insurance, and we're going to focus on the first two mainly today. There's the first policy is a blueberry policy, because as of now, the government only has enough data collected to have a blueberry specific policy. This is a production-based policy, which we'll get into in the next couple slides, but they're working on a raspberry program right now. Right now it's in pilot stage. So we're hoping, got our fingers crossed, that they'll be over these next couple of years, get that so that a grower can have either a blueberry policy, a raspberry policy, or both. And then there's also what's called the whole farm revenue policy. And that's something that the raspberry growers can utilize, because that is something that's going to encompass your entire operation. So everything you grow, everything that is on your farm that is reported to your entity's taxes. Again, we'll get into that later, but there's also what's another private product, which is hail insurance, but realistically, that is something that's really utilized if there's parameters that you don't meet to qualify for like the blueberry policy, the whole farm policy itself, because the main reason is that hail insurance, just like as the name implies, really only covers you against hail. And as we know, berries, raspberries being such a small fruit, it takes a legitimate hail event for enough damage to occur for this policy to really pay out. So that's why I put it on the scale there down to the third, because realistically, it's one of those ones we use as unless you live in a hail-prone area, it's one of those ones we try to utilize unless it's the only thing we can get, and we need to get some kind of protection on there. So let's see. So one thing to remember here is, let's see, what's the crop insurance cycle? There we go. Is crop insurance cycle, there's cycles throughout the year. Unfortunately, for the blueberry policy itself, we just passed what's called the sales closing date, and that is November 20th of every year. And that's when a new client could sign up for the program for the first time. And then after that, it automatically renews every year unless you want to either cancel or make changes to the policy. So this is that 11/20 deadline. And then the whole farm revenue, which is the one that if you're a raspberry grower would be something that you could utilize. That is actually a March 15th deadline, and it's similar to the same thing. Once you're in, you're going to renew it every year unless otherwise decided by that 3/15 deadline. So it's an automatic renewal policy. The benefit of that is that it gives you year-round coverage, so that those unforeseen winter events, cold, you get a frosty winter, something like that happens during early season, that then you're still covered. That's the nice thing about that renewal process, is that's giving you 365-day coverage. Here, and then there's a January 5th for the blueberry policy. There's a January 15th date that we're going to be remembering, and that's where we're going to be reporting all our acreage and all our production that we're going to be growing for that year. So that's when every year, because as we all know, sometimes you're taking on new fields. You might have gotten rid of a field. You might have taken some acres out, and this is where we're going to change that. That's why this is a yearly cycle, that every year we're going to be trying to ensure exactly what you're farming for that year. Okay. Yeah. So these show these dates, except the November 20th fruit sales closing, and then the January 15th is when you're going to report your acreage, and then that's when we're going to report your previous year's production. And then the March 15th is where that revenue policy deadline comes in. All right. So going a little more specifically into the blueberry policy itself, what it is an approved production history policy. So what that means is it's purely based on, you're insuring a certain percentage of the pounds you average pick over your history. So what you're doing is, say on average you pick 10,000 pounds an acre, then you can insure between 50 and 75% of that production. So depending on, and of course, the lower, 50% is going to be much cheaper as far as premium goes, but your coverage amount is going to be, so you have you can insure 5,000 pounds an acre at 55 or 50%, up to 5% coverage level will give you 7,500 pounds per acre coverage. Okay, so that's where this is purely just a production-based policy. So if revenue goes down, price goes down, any of those type of factors, this wouldn't cover that. It's purely how many pounds you pick. Okay, so this is a good policy to have, but again, that's where the whole farm kind of that we'll talk about in a little bit also gives a little bit additional coverage for that. And I have an example here, so we can run through to show you kind of how it works. Real world example. Let's see. Okay. So in this example, get all these up here on the screen. So in this example, what we did is I had the average production per acre is 15,000 pounds. Let's say you decided on a 75% coverage level and you have a 20-acre field. That means your total pound guarantee of that would be 225,000 pounds. That's 75% of your total average production. So let's say when you go over to the right, let's say you actually picked 8,000 pounds the acre on those 20 acres. So what that's going to do is that's going to give you 160,000 pounds of total. So then when you look down, that means you got 225,000 is your guarantee. You picked 160,000. That means you had a deficit of 65,000 pounds. And that projected price, basically the way that projected price is, that changes year over year, and that's set by the federal government. They establish that price, and that's just a flat rate. And they're given 83 cents a pound. So what you do is you take that 83 cents times your 65,000 pound deficit, and that will give you a gross payment of 53,950. Okay, and for reference, this premium over there is pre-subsidy. So what it would be, the full premium is 16,489 for this scenario, but the government is going to subsidize 9,069 of that. So what the grower would actually pay is 7,400. Okay, so realistically, you're looking at a little over 50 or a little under 50% subsidy, or you're paying a little under 50%. So it's about a 55% subsidy on that. And that's given that you're at that 75% coverage level. The lower coverage you go, the more the government subsidizes. But obviously that's because the risk of a payment coming out is going to be less and less the lower coverage you have. So that's the basic blueberry policy. What they're working on is a raspberry policy right now that should mirror this. But what they're doing is they don't have enough, the actuarials at the government don't have enough concrete data to be able to price it correctly right now, or price it appropriately. But they're in the pilot program. I know myself has been in contact with the state and with it's called RMA. They're back in Kansas City. They're the one that oversee the program, trying to shift them raspberry data to try to get it moving along quicker and quicker, because they're kind of the squeaky wheel, or squeaky, gets the work. So we've been trying to push it along, but we're hoping within the next 2 or 3 years we have a raspberry policy that mirrors this blueberry policy. Okay, and then there's also, so it's showing it there. There's also what's called the whole farm revenue policy. And the way I picture this is kind of like an umbrella policy. What it's doing is it's covering your entire operation. So this is where the guys that just have raspberries that wouldn't have be able to insure something otherwise could access this purely by this policy, because like you see in the bottom right over there, if say you grow blueberries and raspberries and then anything else, this is going to ensure a revenue for your entire operation. For ABC Inc., you grow blueberries, raspberries, and pumpkins, let's say, everything. You can ensure that revenue that you're projecting for that year every year based on this policy. So I know, like in Trevor's case, this is something that's very nice for growers, because you can set a revenue floor, like a projection. So when you're doing your projection calculation, say your coverage amount is going to be $500,000, you can have that to utilize as when you're setting your budget, when you're figuring out long-term planning. So I don't know if you want to jump in, kind of how you utilize it.
Just speaking to that is exactly what you said. As growers, we work with some growers who have used this whole farm revenue protection. They haven't had any protection in the past on raspberries. So now they feel like, okay, if I'm building my budget in, I'm hoping that I don't have to use this policy, but worst case scenario now, I know I'm going to get coverage up to 75% of what my budget looks like here. And so then in that worst case scenario, I know, that I can still ultimately make my debt payments and pay my bills at the end of the year with this policy in place. And so whole farm revenue protection continues. We're a leader in it in nation, right? And continues to get more attention locally here. So I say it's probably the most popular one that we see growers use locally.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, I think, in my view, over because what it used to be was called the adjusted gross revenue policy. And then to make it more appealing to kind of the masses, I think they wanted to revamp it so that it's still considered a pilot stage, but it's the same program. And they called it whole farm to really make it more appealing and more just, because it was set aside and was designed for those growers back in the Midwest that grew, say, like wheat, corn, those type of growers. And so it really has branched out now. And actually at Farm Credit, we write the most whole farm in the country as far as an organization. And Washington is one of the biggest in the country that actually writes this policy. It's very popular in Central Washington with all like the orchards. And then, I'm trying to bring that knowledge and that history over here to kind of show, berry growers what it can do for you. Like Trevor was saying, it's just that safety net of, okay, when we're budgeting for our expenses coming up, how much, if we want to buy, some new equipment, okay, what can we have? How can we set that floor so we know that we're not going to over leverage ourselves? So that's where this policy is really beneficial. Okay. Like we're showing up here, I kind of correlated to like that umbrella policy, like when you have on your in your personal insurance, is that it's just a nice, big, broad coverage that covers your entire operation. So basically, what is it? It's revenue safety net for all your commodities grown under that farm entity. Okay, so everything involved. And then it's going to provide protection against loss of revenue, including market price, which is very, as we know, very volatile, especially with the raspberries last few years. And the main aspect of this to remember is that it is based on your tax year. So this is a tax-based policy, and that's one of the ways that that we are able to calculate a projected revenue going forward. Is they're going to use your taxes from the past 5 years to create an average of how much revenue you bring in on average for each growing cycle. So that's how we're going to be able to set. So that's when I was saying earlier that it's based on your specific operation, is that it truly is based on your taxes, your historical revenue, because that gives us the most accurate projection of what we can project each year going forward. And so you can insure up to 75% of your historical revenue. The only thing that it excludes is there's some exclusion of farm animals, but also there's also a potato exclusion if growers are heavy into potatoes. But again, that's a different subject than here. Let's see. So here's the basic example. Let's say the ABC Berries is projecting $1 million from crop sales. They chose to purchase it at 75% coverage level. That means their revenue triggered be $750,000. So like we were talking earlier, you just established that floor that $750,000 is the least you can make for the year. So because of market decline and production loss, you end up making $700,000 when all is said and done for that crop year. There you would get a $50,000 claim, basically bringing you back up to that $750,000 threshold. And again, one of the things to remember on this is being that it's year over year. Say you had the policy in place for the 2021 crop year. To start this claim process and to start all this, what we're just showing here would be when you file your 2021 taxes. So it would start in 2022 at some point, depending on where you are when you file your taxes. Okay. And another thing, especially that we run into in Central Washington, but also you guys run into, is if not all your berries have been paid for at that time, you still have some outstanding that are waiting to be paid in the future. What this policy can do is you can talk to the warehouse, and they will give you an estimated, if you still have 50,000 pounds in there, they can give the insurance company an estimate of how much they believe that 50,000 pounds is worth, and you will be getting paid in the future. And they can use that as a way to close that claim out instead of having to wait potentially 6 months, 8 months, a year, however long it takes to finalize all that. Okay. And then why WFRP? Like, Trevor was hitting on, it makes, sense, especially to like some lenders, and then also the growers when we were talking about like being able to set that budget, set that floor, have that peace of mind knowing that like in that previous scenario, that, hey, we're going to have, no matter, hell or high water, we're going to have $750,000 worth of revenue coming in this year. So we can have that as our budget, as our projections. Again, it'll help keep you in business. So if something really catastrophic happens, at least it can make you whole, where you can come back, we can pay our expenses, we can farm another year. That's something that we really try to emphasize when we're talking with all our different growers, is that this product is really designed to, you don't want to overinsure. We want this product to be out there so that you insure yourself to a state that if something bad happens, we can farm again next year. And then again, it covers market price decline plus all those weather events that we talked about prior. So that's the nice thing, is you can have a beautiful crop out there, and then something happens overseas or something happens domestically and those prices decline. Then this is something that will also protect you in that, because again, that's out of the grower's hands. That's you grew a good crop, and that's something that you could not control. Okay, again, going back to the last option there is that hail policy, but like we talked about a little bit earlier, it's a standalone policy. You can buy it per acre. It's going to give you a certain amount of coverage per acre, but again, it's very limited in what it covers. As the name implies, it covers hail. So it's definitely something that we utilize in small pieces, but it can be something that a grower can use in certain scenarios. And the one thing to remember as well is that since this is considered a private product, it's not subsidized by the federal government. Each insurance company that writes it sets their own premiums. Generally, they're all pretty darn close, but this is something that, because it's a private product. Okay. Oops. Okay, and then again, I just want to remind everybody that farm credit, we are one of the biggest ones that offer this in the state, but also I don't hesitate to, hey, if you have an insurance person that you work with, by all means, go reach out to them. Giving them a call, shoot them an email, ask them, what they know about it, because it's definitely something that's beneficial. At least to get educated on, and hopefully we, educate you guys a little bit here. But I guess if you guys have any questions on how it works, looks like, yeah.
Just on the whole farm, like the old AGR or AGR Life, it's pretty limited cap.
Mm-hmm. The cap is that you can have, and we've been pushing to get it raised, $8.5 million for that one entity that you're insuring is the current cap. But again, that's not it's not 8.5 million and then you can insure 75% of it. That's the insurance amount. So if that's 75%, if you're projecting 10 million and you insure 75%, you're good. So I think mathematically, I think it's like 11 point something, 11.2, 11.3 million would be your projected revenue. If you insured it at 75%, it could be down at 8.5.
Now, in the pilot program, is that something that you are considering raising that cap?
We've been correct. We've been hammering on it. That's one of the nice things about being one of the bigger providers around, is that we do have like one of Farm Credit's leaders actually spoke when the Farm Bill was just updated, and actually went back there and spoke. And that was one of the things they talked about, was not only trying to raise the cap to bring more people in, but also to lower some of the thresholds to get some of the up and coming farmers in, which actually just got released yesterday. There's a micro whole farm policy that's coming out for those smaller growers. But yeah, we've been pushing hard for that, especially because what happens lately to get around those is some growers are creating different entities to funnel their money apart. If they're too big, they'll create, ABC and ABA to have two entities and funnel, which becomes a tax nightmare, right? All just to get And that's what we've been trying to explain to them, is that these growers want this insurance, but they're capping themselves out and they're having to go create these new entities to get the insurance. Why not do something for them? So we've been pushing hard for it for the last at least 3 years, because we're seeing more and more of these people that are capping themselves out.
Final question, is there anything that the Raspberry Commission can or should be doing to help you make that?
To get the Raspberry pilot programs, or to get the Raspberry policy started. I've been pushing for it, and I actually use the Raspberry Commission to actually set pretty much Washington prices for when we're projecting Raspberry prices. We utilize them a lot, but it's definitely something that us at Farm Credit, we can say all we want, but when they hear it from growers, is really, a handful of growers saying something to the federal government, hey, we want this program, is way more beneficial than any of us, going to them. So if by all means, I think any voices that they hear that from the commission would be beneficial. And especially to get those raspberries, more in line with, because that's what it took to get cherries going over in Central Washington too, is it took enough cherry growers saying, hey, we need something here. And it finally, they brought it up enough, and there's been this started off with a pilot, and now there's a full-on cherry program. That's what I'm hoping this raspberry program becomes here soon. Because I heard the pilot program started 2 years ago, and it's generally like a 3 to 5 year cycle before they really get enough hard data to do it. So that's what I'm hoping that next year we might see something for the 2023 crop year. So, any other questions, concerns? Yeah, Trev, you got anything? Or
Oh, no, I was just going to say, swing by, we have a booth, and the best way to have these conversations are kind of one-on-one, and everybody's scenario is a little different and stuff. And so Adam does a good job having these one-on-one conversations about how it may or may not work for your operation. But yeah, thanks again for having us.
Yeah,